you come along. Peter, we're so excited to have you on this evening. Me and you have known each other probably for the last, what would you say, 2 years, 18 months?
Yeah, probably, yeah, 18 months, 2 years. So yeah, about
Yeah, and I always know when you walk in the room because you're always the sharpest dressed individual at any other networking event, and I do tell you quite regularly.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, much appreciated.
great stuff. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Wanting winter to be over, I think, like all of us, but pretty well. How are you doing yourself, Chris?
Not bad, mate. Yeah, it's been a good start to the year. Everyone says it's Blue Monday today, but I'll be honest, I'm not feeling it. I woke up with a rocket up my arse and I'm ready to go. So yeah, I'll probably get ask me by Wednesday. I probably won't necessarily be as enthusiastic, but no, I'm enjoying stuff. So Peter, in terms of you're a serial networker, you're now a TV star. You're an architect developer by trade. So take us right back to the start of your property journey. How did it start, and what first led you into your experience?
Yeah, I think the start probably was that my parents, both of them doctors, also had some interest in property, and they they had a property in Cyprus which they were struggling to find the time to rent out, and I basically begged them when I was about 15 to just let me manage it for them, and that just sort of like opened up a world really because I started, you got to think most of us when we're 15, we're just working at McDonald's, working at Amazon, or whatever. And we're very much experiencing the trading time for money. And as I started to realize quite early when I was systemizing things, I could diversify my income, almost essentially have a form of passive income through through managing this rental property. Um, anyway, I combine that with when studied at university, I studied architecture. I've then since become a qualified architect. And then I've got an architecture practice, Markos Design Workshop. So I studied at UCL and then did my diploma down there as well. Um, and I graduated around the time of COVID, and I was just really keen to set up my own business. I had no idea how I'd do it, where I'd start. And I thought this sort of serviced accommodation experience that I'd had with my parents seemed to make sense as an entry point. And just in my free time, I mean, you might be able to see a few of them in the background, but I just started making these models of a holiday cabin and just dreaming basically of one day being able to build it. Um, and then I was quite actively just posting on Instagram the story basically and just sharing what's going on. And then one day, a group of friends were all like, "Oh, have you seen this competition Airbnb are doing?" Which was they were giving 100 people $100,000 to each build their unique property and rent it out. Um, and this was tax free. It was grant income. It was an incredible opportunity. So I was lucky enough to actually receive that funding. And then I built the first version of the cabin, which was the monocoque cabin, and then started renting that out. And it's done pretty well since we've been renting it out last year. And now we've moved. Since then, I got which I'll go into, but since then I got an investor through the property elevator, Nicholas Wallwork, and we've gone into the made to order market. So based on the first cabin prototype that I designed, built out, rented out, we're now making these to order to serve as for consumers who are looking to purchase them. Do you want me to talk a little bit about the property elevator as well?
I do, but I want to pick you up on something first, which was something you said straight away, and it was one of the sort of biggest bombs you've dropped, which was that your parents basically allowed you to manage their holiday let for them at 15 years old. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anyone else in the audience, but my mum wouldn't have trusted me with an extra house key, let alone an extra house to manage. So, tell us a little bit more about that. How did that work? And I imagine would you have done a lot of research, or would it been sort of learning as you're going along from your parents, and then sort of making it your own in terms of managing that property? How did that work?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Chris. I mean, that was pretty much 15 years ago. So we started renting it on Airbnb, and Airbnb back then, well, it was actually really in its early days,
Mm,
Airbnb. So a lot of the systems they have on now, which makes renting a property out even easier, they actually didn't have back then. I think the beginning thing was really just flying out there, going to take some decent photos, obviously because of my architecture, creative background. I've got an interest in that. And I think at the time as well, the market was pretty shit, to be honest. There was not
mm,
there wasn't really very good competition. It's not like it is now. The vast majority of people be taking photos on their phones. I had like a DSLR, so I took some proper photos, etc. And what happened was I basically just teamed up with a cleaner out there in Cyprus. He spoke English. He was very good, very competent, very what's the word? Just very conscientious, to be fair. Um, and it was kind of quite easy. We just, in that sense, get a booking, and I'd pass that booking on to him. I think in hindsight, the thing I realized, and this isn't a massive revelation, is actually running an Airbnb business is not necessarily that difficult. Um, you know, of course, there's a difference between getting 100% occupation rate versus getting like a 20% occupation rate. Um, but the actual changeovers and things, so long as you're on top of the calendar, it's not that difficult. But obviously, the main challenge you're going to have is actually getting to the stage of having the property in the first place, and that part wasn't taken care of by me. Yeah, it's I don't know, it's a difficult one. It's when I say it, I think yeah, it's kind of weird that my parents trusted me with it and trusted me with that. I think probably from their side, they didn't think there's too much on the risk side. The risks being you might have like an unsatisfied customer and things, but we didn't. That none of that was really a problem because the cleaner did a good job. We did have some bad customers. I remember there was this one guy who said that the place was such a tip and um, basically blackmailed me to pay him the booking fee back. And I obviously, if that had happened now, I wouldn't have, paid him the money back, and I would have read the room for what it was. But yeah, that's obviously a big part of that is age and inexperience.
and I guess that if you didn't have that many problems in terms of, you obviously had challenges, but that really gave you a positive outlook on serviced accommodation and how it could work well for you. And I guess if you already had an interest in architecture, there was only one way you were going to go really in terms of your career. So that's really, really exciting. But I guess one of the things that always stands out to me about you, Peter, is you're an extremely good communicator. And the way you talk is you tell a really interesting story and convey that really well. And I guess that's half the battle is when you're able to communicate that confidently to people and get all those parts moving, and they know exactly what it is that you're looking for, then it kind of sets the wheels in motion. So would you say that's sort of a fair assumption?
Well, I mean, I think that's very flattering and very lovely. I've never heard anybody say that I'm a good storyteller. So it's really lovely to hear. Um, yeah, I guess so. I think so long as you communicate the mission and what you're looking to do. I mean, now that with like now that obviously expanded a bit. gone into the monocoque cabin and having that as a product, it's quite important to also just, it's been quite important communicating that to the cleaner I'm working with now as well. And as with anything, I think when we first got that up and running, there were some challenges, but communicating the vision, saying, for example, I wanted her to be fully autonomous, to not have to rely on me to say, hey, look, we've got booking, or when there's when things like the tea bags have run out, or whatever it is, she's able to take full autonomy over it. And obviously, we pay her appropriately and accordingly. But just giving that agency and saying there's a vision, I actually think something that has served me quite well in both instances, though, is, you know, um, trusting people and actually trying to, um, uh, really build a good relationship with people and keep them on. Because I've worked for companies in the past which are far more cutthroat and they have a high staff turnover. And I think the problem with that is, you know, I it's almost like you have to start your business from scratch every time. If you're constantly just turning people over to try and find somebody who's slightly better, yeah, I say it's like starting your business from scratch every week.
So let's move on then to the serviced accommodation side. So obviously you've graduated, you are now qualified architect, and you're starting to specialize in serviced accommodation. Now, me and you have had a sort of chat off camera about the differences between what good holiday lets look like and what bad ones look like.
Mm.
What was the sort of market that you saw there? What was some of the telltale signs? Because I have stayed in some glamping pods previously, and they've not been the best experience. They are as close to camping as you can possibly get.
Yeah.
Except the levels of damp inside them are a lot higher because the ventilation's a lot worse. But you quite rightly said to me that there is a distinct difference between what the standards should be and what is currently being placed out on the market.
Yeah, no, it's a really great question, Chris. I think there is a demand and supply issue. Basically, there's a lot of supply on the market, and I don't want to say anything to offend anybody per se, but there's a lot of shit pods on the market in the sense that they are, and often that they, even the companies who make them, advertise this as being the case. There's a shepherd's hut or some kind of pod which has a lifespan of about 5 to 10 years. As you're saying, they've got terrible insulation. They might not be ventilated. They use really cheap materials. Now, from an ROI perspective, I can see why a lot of developers, um, Airbnb hosts, initially do that. Is they think I can buy this cabin for 10, 20,000 pounds, or potentially less, potentially a bit more, and it will have a decent ROI, so it will pay itself off. One of the things, and it actually took me a long time to realize this. It was my old accountant who told me this. He said the real value in a service accommodation business, like a cabin business, is not actually the rental income, but it's actually the sale of the business. It's when you come to sell the business. And when he told me this, I remember it just completely changed the way I saw business and the way I saw everything, really. And I read a book like Build to Sell and things. So I started to read up on this, and I realized he's absolutely right. But one of the problems, just going back to these cheaper pods, is because they have such a small lifespan, they're a bit like a depreciating asset. They're a bit like a car, let's say, which just appreciates over the years. What we've tried to do is to design with a monocoque cabin is to design a product which is very unique from an aesthetic perspective, so that people are like, wow, this is unlike anything I've ever seen. But I think probably more critical, and it's actually something which is quite difficult to communicate and only comes through in things like webinars like this is, and I think the real thing which is great with our product is it's got a lifespan of 50, 100 years, potentially even longer if it's looked after in the correct way. It's all made from timber, but we're using natural materials. We're using high quality natural hardwoods, cedar shingles, and and so long as it's well detailed, these things have a long lifespan. What I would say about that as well is, this isn't because obviously it's very difficult for me to prove in 100 years. Is it? I'm probably not going to be around. You're not going to be around. But it's not. None of this is theoretical. Let's say. So if you go to a lot of existing pubs, I mean, there's one in Digbeth in Birmingham. It's a 600-year-old timber pub. It's the same Stratford upon Avon. It's the same in London. You have lots of timber buildings which are hundreds of years old. This is the UK. It's a very wet country. So there's a misconception with timber buildings that these are things which don't have a long lifespan. So long as you actually pick the right high quality materials, so long as it's detailed correctly, there's no reason that these things cannot last hundreds of years. So that's what we're offering. And we're saying, yes, there's a higher cost of purchase price, but it's not that much higher. And what you get in return is a higher yield because you have a unique product, but also a more valuable business because you have something which has, a longer lifespan.
That's such a good point. We had Louise Wynn on recently, who's an interior designer. She owns a business called Wild Kind Interiors, and she said that
Mhm.
if you design first with the end in mind, and if you're looking at the interior design of a property to last for as long as possible, then it saves you so much money in the long run. And I sort of got a distinct flashback of going to a glamping pod, and I'll use the word pod to distinguish the difference between cabins. But I went to a pod, and the moment I got out of the car and stood on the decking cracked underneath my foot. And the decking is the same material as the rest of the pod has been made out of, and looked in the same condition. And if you have decking in your house, they normally say, what is it, 15 to 25 years that's going to last, and
Yeah.
that's with painting it every couple of years. Why would you then build a structure to house people in, which is going to have a hell of a lot more wear and tear in the long run, and then use that as your serviced accommodation business?
Yeah, exactly. Again, I can see why people do it because part of them is worrying, is this going to work? They want a lower entry point. I mean, the example I always give is like a pair of boots. I mean, I actually think the economics theory is called boots economics, which is the more affluent in society can afford to enter a market and buy a more expensive product like a nice pair of boots. But economically, they benefit because those boots last them 20, 30 years. Whereas a lot of other people have to buy cheaper plastic trainers. And those trainers are, yes, about half the price, but they need to be replaced every couple of years or so. So economically, they're worse off, and it's a very very similar concept.
Yeah, totally agree. So you have this you've designed this cabin. So how does it work? Do you then send that off to a manufacturer? Have you bought the land? What's the situation?
Yeah, really good question. So we've got a manufacturer who we're really close with, who we've worked with for a number of years, and we've between us we've just developed quite a distinct manufacturing process. So the manufacturing process basically means that we're able to create what looks like quite an organic, unusual cabin. I'll tell you what, might actually be able to. I've got this is an older version, but since it's a webinar, um, you know, that's the value of being on a webinar. So this is a 3D printed version. Like I said, this is a little bit of an older version. Um, So lots has changed since then, but you'll just get a general idea of the form. So we're actually able to create, like I said, that very unique organic form through this manufacturing process that we've developed. So in terms of, let's say somebody was looking to do one of these cabins or purchase one off us, how it would work is we obviously, if you've got your own land, if you're, for example, a farmer or you own some farmland, it would obviously just be a case of purchasing the cabin, placing it on the land. You'd more than likely need planning permission. Again, there's a lot of misinformation. People saying you don't need planning permission. You usually do because it's a form of commercial property. And depending on your access to electricity, if you've got access to electricity on the site, you'd just be able to plug and play in that sense. Alternatively, if you don't, there's use of solar panels. The solar panels are sufficient to provide energy for it off-site. The other option, and this is what I did actually with my first version, is to enter into a lease agreement with a landowner. So I met a farmer and said to him, look, I'll give you 20% of the profits from this for a small bit of your land to rent it out. Now, for him, because he's a dairy farmer, it's really appealing because essentially what they're giving up is a piece of their land which has grass on it, and you don't need that much land. So the ROI for a dairy farmer on that piece of land versus what the cabin would yield is massive. The cabin just makes so much more for the farm than if it was just simply dairy farm. Another option would be a lease option as well with a landowner. But the good thing with these as well is, I mean, ideally you would want to have it on the land, rent it out for a few years and potentially sell it as a business and say, look, this is the rental income you can anticipate per year. This is how it's grown over the years, etc., etc. And to sell that as a full business, potentially doing a deal with a landowner, etc. For whatever reason, if that didn't work out or if you wanted to relocate it, the good thing with these is they can be relocated, I'd say fairly easily, the cost of a couple of grand or so to get it onto a lorry. So in that sense, it is very much doable. Not sure if that answered your question there.
Yeah, definitely. Pete, just hold the model up again a second.
This was,
I'm going to ask you a bit of I'm going to ask you a bit of a weird question.
Mm-hmm.
That model of the bloke in there,
Yeah.
is he to scale with you? Because you're well over 6 foot like me.
Yes, he is. I think it's 180 centimeters. So yeah, about so. Yeah.
So you've actually built one that me and you could stand up in for a change.
Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah.
It'd be nice to walk in without actually banging my head on something.
Oh no, that definitely not. No, I mean to be honest, Chris, you'll need to stay in my cabin because there's no way you're going to bang your head on that.
So what location have you chosen?
So for the first one, so it's Market Drayton, which is in Shropshire.
Yeah.
There wasn't a massive amount of strategic decision making with that, to be honest. As I saw it, it had some big advantages. So the site itself is beautiful. Market Drayton is also about an hour's drive from Birmingham, as well as being an hour's drive from London. So, outside London, Manchester. So outside London, you're near the two biggest cities, which is very advantageous. But the downside, I'd say, with Market Drayton or Shropshire is it's fairly unheard of. Like I talk to a lot of people who've never heard of Shropshire, so that's a bit of a downside. I just seen somebody's asked in the comments what the spec is. So if I just hold it up again, So on the outside, you have cedar shingles. I'm not sure how well the camera's picking the detail up, but basically on the outside, you have cedar shingles, which are imported from Canada, but they have a lifespan of about 100 years. And then at the top there, you've got zinc, because that's where the main rainwater is going to hit. And then internally, the walls are lined in birch plywood, or spruce plywood. The reason I say spruce plywood is we used to get most of our plywood from Russia, like 95% of plywood used to come from Russia. So spruce plywood has been used as the alternative. And then the decking is made from sapele as well, which is actually the same wood as this. So there's no way that Chris's foot is going to go through that without cutting it.
Brilliant. And he's asking what the sides are in what size and what the inside.
Yeah, so we're actually looking at um, over the next coming years, we're looking at having like a range of options, basically following the same sort of design. So that one in particular is about 8 meters long and 3 meters wide, and then internally it's about 3 meters tall. Because I mean, Chris, like you're saying, again, the whole thing of banging your head on the ceiling, that's just yet another example of these pods being value engineered so that they can cut a few £100 off the height, irrespective of somebody's experience. And again, I think this has come a large part due to the demand and supply. There's been a big demand for cabins, and people seemingly just think, oh, if I just stick something on my land, I can just rent it out. And the reality is, yeah, that was the case during COVID or post COVID, but a lot of that is changing now. The market is getting more sophisticated. And if you want to build something that lasts, then that's not the best strategy.
Definitely. So, uh, Shropshire, Market Drayton, home of Muller yogurts. So it's a fantastic.
Gingerbread man as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, it's the Shropshire Hills, beautiful place. It's a really good place to go on that sort of holiday. Um, had you already sorted the land out when you went on property elevator? Talk me through that. What was the process like?
Yeah, so the property element. So basically, I've done the first version of the monocoque cabin, got it rented out, started to get some numbers, and then obviously through a networking event you and I go to, I just heard about the property elevator, and I had no idea whether I had a chance in hell in being able to um, uh, like even get onto the property elevator because I felt the deal was a little bit unusual in that sense. And then I applied, and then I got on to the property elevator, but they only give you like 3 or 4 days to get ready. And for me, 3 of those days I was in a stag do in Scotland, so yeah. So
So,
there was a bit of a panic, but basically my girlfriend and I we built that model together because I thought a model would be a good way of just people can pick it up and imagine it. What I proposed getting investment to do 3 more cabins. Nicholas Wallwork was like really supportive and came out and said, "Look, I want to invest." And then he offered to invest in the business. And then post the investment on the property elevator, um, he he suggested that we move the business away from being a service accommodation business to being a product which is made to order. Um, and yeah, I think it's been a very good suggestion. It's a good idea because obviously with a service accommodation business, there can be a limit in growth in the especially if you don't want to grow it from a debt perspective. And I'm somewhat reluctant to take on debt, start having some of these having additional units and then paying off the debt because there is obviously a little bit of a risk in terms of if we had another COVID situation, then we'd all be locked down, etc. Um, so yeah, as you can imagine, I'm really, really nervous on the show, but it all worked out for the better as well.
Were you still feeling a bit worse from work coming back from Scotland?
Yeah, and you know what's good though is I'm not much of a drinker, so I was probably a bit tired, but I wasn't like hungover or anything, which is good. So yeah,
And did you remember your numbers?
no, to be completely honest with you, I mean, people can watch the property elevator episode, um, and to be honest, I'd say this is why I'd say to people probably just apply as well because I if you watch the episode, it looks like I speak very well and all of that sort of thing. But they've just edited it quite well. Like I was really copying up my numbers. I was pretty nervous. I must say though, I think I was very, very nervous at first. But then as we got talking, probably not too dissimilar from this webinar, as we started talking, um, I started to get a bit more relaxed and feel like, oh, actually, yeah, that's okay, and just started joking along a bit and just having a bit more conversation.
Great. And the am I right in saying that the amount of filming time is probably about 4 or 5 hours worth, and then they condense it down into your sort of 10-minute segment? Was that how it sort of played out?
Yeah, so the you being on stage is about 40 minutes, and then outside of that, because that's you standing on platform. Outside of that, they film like lots of the videos of introducing you speaking to the show host, and that all of that as well takes like a good few hours as well. So it's a full day thing, and then I think obviously they just stitch it together.
Great. Guys, if you've got any more questions, please do drop them in the chat. Unfortunately, Peter, or fortunately, you've got another potential customer that's interested in talking to you. So you're going to have to leave us in a minute or two. But we really appreciate you joining us this evening. If anyone wants to watch that episode back or they want to reach out to you, explore this a little bit further, what's the best ways of getting in touch with you?
Yeah, so probably the best way right now would be actually just reaching me on my website. So that is Markos Design Workshop. My email is on there, so people can drop me a email. There's actually also an option to just book a call, so which is obviously free. So uh, uh, love to speak to anybody who's considering this model or just got any questions in general. Um, yeah, and then that episode is Series 8, Episode 1.
Series 8, Episode 1.
Yeah, yeah.
So coming fly out straight out the traps on the because they've just gone to Amazon. So you're coming straight out the traps on that one. So fantastic news. And you were telling me off camera that you regularly contribute to the blog on your website. You do a lot of articles, that kind of thing. And we're hoping you're going to post a few more of those in UK Homes Network. But I'm sure if anyone wants to read up on it, they can. And can you share us a little bit about what it is that you're posting on there on a regular basis?
Yeah, so a lot of that is because obviously I've got an architecture business as well. So a lot of that is actually just tackling some of the questions people have with projects. So, how much does an eco home cost? What's the Royal Institute of British Architects work stages? Because every project follows like a set of work stages. How to maximize lighting into your house, things like that. And obviously, yeah, it's there as a resource. I really like writing. I really like writing my thoughts, thinking about things. I think parts of makes you a better architect. So that's been my form of marketing. Because I think, like I was saying to you, Chris, I think I've always struggled with marketing, and it's it's a game I've never had any training in or never been particularly strong in. But I think particularly over the last few months, I found that blog posts and has just been a real good source of marketing for me, but also just a very authentic way for me to communicate in a way that I find to some extent Instagram and LinkedIn is writing and to some extent so is Instagram, but sometimes I find those sort of shorter reels just not me in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it's
Um,
not for everyone, and particularly if you're going to do something that you're comfortable with, you'll do it way better than other people that are not necessarily comfortable with writing in the style or the more long form like you are. So, guys, definitely check that out. Peter, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this evening. We'll see you tomorrow at the Developers Network in Birmingham. So you get a double whammy of me this week.
yeah,
Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining us. We will be back next week with Rob Peters. And if you want to watch this episode back, you can do in the on-demand webinars tab in UK Homes Network. Cheers, mate.
nice one, Chris. Thanks so much.
Cheers, guys. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye bye bye.